Good evening and welcome to Gonzaga University and the fifth event of our 2010 to 11 Visiting Writer Series. Please turn off your cell phones and other electronic devices. Before I introduce our reader, I'd like to thank the many people that helped realize this event for our campus and community. Humanities Washington, a great supporter of the arts in our state, has blessed us once again with a grant to help fund our programming. Here on campus, the offices of the Academic Vice President, the Unity House Multicultural Education Center, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, GSBA, and the Faculty Speaker Series generously support these readings. I'd also like to acknowledge the Davenport Hotel and Penaluna and Company of Coeur d'Alene for their gifts. Linda McDonald, Rebecca Hoffland, and Gail Lancaster, usual suspects, have and continue to be valuable to the series. Gail is, of course, from the campus bookstore. They do a great job subsidizing this series for Gonzaga students, faculty, and staff. Books are thus available for purchase this evening at a reduced cost. Please support the author and the bookstore by making a purchase. Rick will be available to sign books after the event at the small table over here to my right. Please help me in thanking all of these people. I should warn you, my introduction is going to be a little longer than usual because my prefatory remarks are going to extend longer than usual, so please bear with me. If that was an acknowledgments page, then we now move on to the preface. The 2011-12 Gonzaga University Visiting Writer Series has been awarded a National Endowment for the Arts Challenge America grant for $10,000. This is the first ever National Endowment for the Arts grant awarded to Gonzaga University, and I am proud of our series for earning this distinction. Of course, it's a given that our great authors, like Rick Moody tonight, Jimmy Santiago Baca and Naomi Shiab-Nye from last fall, Jane Hirschfield, Robert Hass, Dennis Johnson, Sharon Olds, Uwe Mokpan, and so many others, it's a given that these authors make our series strong. However, I think that it's also very important to recognize and celebrate all of you. Whitman wrote, quote, "To have great poets, there must be great audiences." Our series has been blessed with great audiences. Students, we know that you're here because you're either excited about literature, eager to educate your whole person, or hoping for extra credit. That's fine. More than one student over the last few years told me that compulsory attendance blossomed into profound engagement. Folks from off campus, thank you so much for coming. And if you take a minute on your way out to fill an information card at the table at the back of the room, we'd like to add you to our email list to alert you about events and opportunities connected to our writers. And I won't be coy, because at my back I always hear a budget crisis looming near. If you're interested and able to support the series, then you can indicate that on the card, and we would be most grateful. My duties to university relations are now over. Okay, I apologize for my lengthy prologue and advertisement. Tonight's author, though, needs little introduction from me. The Rick Moody Award Parade has the familiar floats and the noteworthy names: American Academy of Arts and Letters, Pushcart, Guggenheim, Penn, Best American Stories, etc., etc., etc. The body of work is impressive: 10 books, including novels, collections of short stories, and a memoir with digressions. The blurbs are hagiographic. His sassy website has just such an entry, Hagiography, which includes the following raves. Quote, "Rick Moody is one of the most prodigiously talented writers in America," The Wall Street Journal. Quote, "Moody makes sure we know when the laugh should hurt, never puts a foot wrong," New York Times. Quote, "Moody might be best known for his Connecticut novel, The Ice Storm, but his fiction is widely varied in form and setting, and his new novel, The Four Fingers of Death, promises to be his wildest and best book yet," The Boston Globe. He is also a musician and an advice columnist. More on this later. All of which is to say he is one of the most innovative and accomplished writers in America. He is ambitious and able, ambitious in his stylistic and formal innovations, able to inhabit the dark places of human consciousness where the most powerful conflicts breed, foment, metastasize. Whatever your verb, Rick Moody's fiction forces us to go to these places with him and ask the questions with which his characters grapple. Questions about morality, culture, politics, theology, what it is to be human, which, of course, is no surprise given Moody's comments about the purpose of literature, well stated on his website's Life Coach section, where he may actually respond to your letter seeking advice. Dear Rick, he claims it might be a fallback career for him. He has already responded to letters from an angry Hegelian, a confused writer, and one scatologically challenged writer, shit gone south. Anyhow, his statement about literature reads, quote, "My idea of literature, as I've often said, is that it should save lives. My idea of literature is that it once did save lives and was of consequence in that way. I believe it can do so again. With every book, to the best of my ability, I try to put this belief in action, even if, as in some of the recent books, the best way to save lives is to cause laughter." I don't know if Rick plans on mirth or melancholy for tonight's event, but I am confident that whatever emotion he wants to elicit, his talent, wit, and spirit will succeed. Please help me in welcoming Rick Moody.
Do I have to put this thing on or no? Well, I'm really happy to be here. I'm really grateful to Todd for being such a great host and making this easy and fun, and putting us in a really great hotel with ghosts and a very strange digital fish tank. I think I'm going to read this news story. I was sort of talking at the Q&A a little bit today about how I like sometimes formal challenges, and they enable me to get someplace emotionally and with the prose that I wouldn't be able to get if not for the limitation of the challenge. So I'll give you some background on this particular piece. A couple years ago, there was a new magazine begun at Brooklyn College called Electric Literature, and the idea of electric literature was to try to take literature, capital L, and to find digital and other highly technological interfaces for that. That is, not to write stuff that was gimmicky with respect to advanced technology, but to write stuff that was legitimately literary and then find a way to sort of engage with what was happening on the web and so forth. So these guys asked if I would write a story, and I had long been playing in my head with this idea to try to write something using Twitter. And what I liked I actually disliked Twitter considerably, but what I did like about it was the little 140 character counting box on their website. So I wrote the story in tweets, to use the Vulgate, and there are 153 tweets in the story, and it was first published by Electric Literature on Twitter, a tweet every 10 minutes, 8 hours a day, and it took 3 days to publish the story. So that was its first publication. It then later appeared in a print form, and that's what I'll be reading. It's called Some Contemporary Characters. Oh, I might read a little one-page excerpt from Four Fingers of Death when I'm done with this too. Some Contemporary Characters. Oh, it's a he said, she said story. It'll be probably abundantly obvious which is which, I hope. There's an introductory line, and then the he's and the she's begin. There are things in this taxable and careworn world that can only be said in a restrictive interface with a minimum of characters. Saw him on OkCupid, agreed to meet. In his bio, he said he had a different conception of time. And guess what? He didn't show. I waited for her 3 days, on and off. True, they were the wrong 3 days. Went back a week later to that coffee shop of longing. Bunch more online dates, all candidates underemployed with big plans. One guy worked in sewage treatment. One guy played sax on the IRT. The waitress at the establishment used the word honey repeatedly each time it was a kindness in that lonely urban setting. No lie, I walked by the place where I was supposed to meet that man. 2 weeks later, he's sitting there reading a book. Certain questions relating to human conduct require earnest reflection. The rest of the world is absent for a time. How to explain? A man more than twice your age who's always late. Rule him out right away, or at least attempt to let him explain himself. I said, old enough to remember that feminine beauty is nowhere apparent in a point-of-purchase glossy containing the word cellulite. I said, young enough to assert a right to text an account, warts and all, from the diner bathroom in case you are a serial rapist. Willing to play along if playing along involves a certain idea of language because we are how we use the tongue now. The thinning hair and the extra 15 pounds, sure, but I could tell that from the photo online. He wasn't a total schlump. A jeans with skirt over them type, sort of busty, with 3 different hair colors, none of them found in nature. I think he wore an earring at some point. You could see the little divot in his earlobe. How long ago and why? If she had an ass to die for, what did that mean with regard to gender politics? And was I willing to die for an ass to die for? What did he actually do? Did he actually do anything? Is it only me who stumbles on these guys whose occupation is daydreamer? Proposed another sit-down 4 days hence, then drove to Vermont to have my colon cleansed by a harpy with dreadlocks. I said yes to the date, then hooked up with a coworker because I could. For the record, the dude with the last shift at the Carmine Street bar. Next, I suggested a film by Tarkovsky because I felt that if she could sit through it, there might be hope. Instead, the film caused typing. Dullest movie I have ever seen made confessional poetry and folk music night at the student union sound like big fun. That's how dull. The suppression of the semicolon, the inability to avoid the use of like, the over-reliance on the simple sentence, ills of the age. Why agree to a third date? Because I already had plenty of people to go with me when I needed eyebrow piercing. Sooner or later, love is about death, no matter the lover. Desire coughs up the rank fumes of death. And so, I proposed bowling. He said, the shoes are sublime. The shoes recall a semiotics of freight train hopping. And yes, the pins connect us to American folklore. She said, the shoes are funky and they make me want to dance on one of those light-up dance floor video game things. Give me a 10. He said, I'd say you were the worst bowler ever, but that would be dialectical style analysis, and well, Hegel is so 80s. She said, if I bowl a strike now, you can tell me if you're impotent or if you take Viagra or have benign enlarged prostate. Maybe he's a life coach, and it'd just be my luck since everyone says I make dumb decisions about things. But I can bowl. An ungodly strike, an indisputable strike, one pin teetering at the rightmost margin like chastity itself toppling with a dramatic sigh. Not that anyone's keeping track, but now comes the part when the rules of engagement permit a discussion of human sexuality. I determined not to gab, and thereby I would be young again, by instead using my lips for what lips are designed for, which is not gabbing. Kissing a guy with gray hair on the street in front of a pizzeria by a bowling alley and shoving my tongue way in. Inadvisable? Contraindicated, against the code, breaking the most conceivable taboos, pedophiliac, bringing waves of guilt. Still, she was ardent. That was it, nothing else. And people kiss every day, and the only difference nowadays is that people try to text while kissing. Her eyes drifted off. I could see her preparing something witty. Can't quite read keyboard, 'cause tongue in somebody's mouth. Actually, I did text on the way home, and mainly because I knew my roommate was going to get up in my face. Did he kiss old? Up around 4 a.m., sorting and recycling back issues of The Nation, a bit more age appropriate than smooching some barmaid. He called me because, he said, phoning after a date was required. Landlines. So Tracy and Hepburn. I thought, letting me down easy. She IM'd me on FB to tell me that her mother had summoned her home for the weekend. She had to go. I thought, met a kid her own age. My mother is 2 years older than he is, same age practically. She's already telling me which jewelry is mine when she dies. Note to self at dawn. S. Spielrein recognized the destructive essence of desire, an idea that she passed on like an STD to Freud and Jung. He's assuming I get all my information from the iPhone or from the interwebs, but I also get my info from bar patrons. Enough. Enough blather. Enough neurotic vacillation. Enough middle-aged hand-wringing. For whatever reason, she seems to like you. Enough. Coney Island was open one more weekend, and it was getting cooler, and I had a halter top I really liked. Cream-colored. I'd never been to Coney Island because I disliked crowds, though I have been writing notes about the Russian mob, existentialism thereof. On the train, he told me that his dad, who disliked him and called him ne'er-do-well, left him enough money to survive precariously. On the train, she indicated that she'd been assaulted by a friend of her older brother's when in her middle teens. Details murky and sad. On the train, he said that his partner of decades, estranged, worked with deaf kids. He saw the loss of her as a great, enduring fuck-up. On the train, she coiled her necklace, some trinket from St. Mark's Place, around her fingers like a proposition that she couldn't resolve. On the train, he said he hadn't slept with anyone for years, said his one successful relationship had been with solitariness itself. On the train, she asked what I liked to do with my body, and I winced, because there was nothing at all that I liked to do with it. On the train, I asked what he liked to do with his body, and he answered that he wasn't certain. How could he be, that he inhabited a body? On the train, she hooked a thumb in her jeans and looked away. One sandal and then the other traversed the summit of a knee. I watched. On the train, I tried to flirt. Who knows why? Because what did I think I wanted? I don't know. Sometimes you just do things. On the train, she could not flirt much because there was no phone service, and as a result, her affect was much constrained. On the train, I said that the sand was warm at Coney and there were hypodermic needles, and if you lay down, you could see the stars. On the train, I said that I had lower back pain and needed a lot of support under my knees. In fact, I needed support generally. On the train, I looked at his gray pullover, his thrift store suit pants, his whitish hair. This man will be my lover? And then, after that? On the train, when the riders thinned out, she circled around the metal pole, mocking and engaging the pole dance. On the train, when everyone got off, I let him know that I knew what was expected, which was the idea of a young woman. On the train, I asked her why she did these things. Didn't she have any better way of meeting people if people were what she was after? On the train, I said, why were you on OkCupid in the first place, trolling for co-eds, if you're against the way people have fun now? Into an awkwardness of human relations, mercy can sometimes felicitously intrude, or, contrawise, we came to the end of the line. You can see the cyclone from just about anywhere, and my heart thundered at the screams as we ambled off the train. You've got to be kidding, I said. I am no longer young. I am no longer at the point where I can remember my youth, and I'm panicky. He said spinning things made him puke, and roller coasters reminded him of military service, even though he never served. She said that we were going on the coaster no matter what, even when I observed that the freak show was rumored to be of a high caliber. What's a roller coaster but a spot where you make out with someone you just mashed yourself against? Is there another purpose? The entire phenomenon is really about the first great plummet, because every hill after the first is slightly less persuasive. You have to be willing to do the first hill and to feel the wooden beams of the frame all shuddery beneath you. The rest is gravy. A price break is offered for the second time around, which is the way life is. You pay to be nauseated, and then you get a volume discount on more. We rode 3 times, and by the 3rd time the scary parts got all routine, and he was green, so we went to play skee ball. Coney Island is a demolition site, a future overdevelopment shrine, and the only thing that salves the wound is the ubiquity of skee ball. Roll this old wooden ball up a ramp and try to get into a ball-sized hole, then you get some tickets, which are worth nada. The tickets are actual tickets because they say ticket on them. If you win 10,000, you can redeem these for a Chinese squirt gun. I'm good at bowling, and I'm good at skee ball, and so I won a stuffed rabbit, and we took the rabbit, and we walked out on the boardwalk. Out there, the same Atlantic Ocean that laps the Outer Banks and pools in Casco Bay. It shimmers in the moon glow, unused. Every beachfront should have a boardwalk. Every boardwalk should have orthodox couples. Always, there should be gang activity. I said I was writing about the Russian mob and Dostoevsky for contemporary psychoanalysis. Wasn't trying to boast, just talking. He said he'd like it if we went to have dinner in Brighton Beach because the amusement park was just too adolescent. She said I needed to take my inner adolescent out and show him a really, 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 really nasty time. And then we were on the beach. pretty ugly beach with all the trash and everything, but next to the Atlantic in twilight. I come from a landlocked state, PA, and I live part-time in a landlocked state, VT, and so I am awed by an oceanic expanse. I don't want to say that something happened on the beach that wouldn't have happened anywhere else. It should have happened on the cyclone. I don't want to say that something happened on the beach that the ocean was somehow responsible, but she did put away her iPhone. I was supposed to text or email my friend Ariel every 20 minutes, or it meant that he was hacking me into pieces and eating me. Putting the phone in her pocket was somehow the most revealing thing, like when myopics put their glasses on the bedside table. There was light from the boardwalk, sound of ocean, some Latino troublemakers cackling nearby, and we fell into each other's arms. In the sand, in the sand. I can't even stand up most days, what with the bad back, but I fell into the sand, and oh, her arms. We twisted around some way so I was on top for a while. He couldn't crush me. I could feel his complications in the dim light. She was like some sprite, and there was that incredible feeling known to all persons when your cares become insubstantial. He tasted like Listerine, Mylanta, roast beef, mesclun salad, decaf from one of those old coffee pots from a tag sale, saltwater taffy. She tasted like chai latte, light beer, nicotine gum, Tic Tacs, grapefruit, cider vinegar, chocolate chip cookies, and the middle class. He kept trying to say something, but then he couldn't say it. He couldn't say anything. I thought this was amusing. Low light helps. A distracting milieu, tens of hundreds of tourists, calliope sounds, roller coasters, the moon. It'd be interesting to see how many languages world over offer some version of the phrase, get a hotel room. They say get a hotel room in Spanish, they can say it in Russian, and they can say it in Black vernacular dialect. I like saying suck my dick to any asshole who gets on my nerves, but when you're lying on the sand embracing someone, you just don't bother. At some point there were limitations, which were limitations of conscience and propriety in a public place, no matter how honky-tonk. You always think that love or sex or whatever are like totally liberated or totally liberating, but then there are things you just don't do. Desaad's only limit was his imagination, but he was in a prison cell when he scribbled down his provocations. There were a few hotels there, I guess, but we'd have to pay up, and he had no credit cards because he didn't believe in usury. There are certain hygiene regimens, scalp-related, that I really don't like to do without unless it's absolutely unavoidable. My parents' names are all over my one Amex, and I didn't want them to see that. And then I realized I didn't have any extra underwear. So we found ourselves walking back toward the train, upbeat, at least till we realized we'd misplaced the rabbit. On the train, I thought, some feelings you only realize later how important they are. Do you know where your toy rabbit is? On the train, I asked myself, am I ready to step out from the wings onto the stage of romantic activity? Did I somehow slay the rabbit? On the train, he got even shyer, though I just felt him up against me. I'd felt his heartbeat and some other parts of him too. On the train, she knew what I knew, that I was a retiring person trying not to be, and I was embarrassed in her knowing. On the train, it started to feel hopeless and awkward, where on the way out it had been hopeful, and there'd been an adrenaline of possibility. On the train, running out of things to say, I figured I'd discuss politics. Must have been desperate, as this is such a bad topic. On the train, he brought up politics, which probably to him meant like Al Gore or something. I was 13 when Al Gore ran. On the train, I stammered about campaign financing being the third rail of the American political establishment, and she said, "Huh?" On the train, I told him that I was pierced, I was tattooed, I was tribal, I loved whatever way I wanted to, and that was my revolution. On the train, I said, "You don't understand. Politics isn't the kind of thing you can just ignore, even if voting is a big buzzkill. And..." On the train, I said, "The other thing you're overlooking, if you don't mind my saying, is tech stuff, and that is so political." On the train, I said, "There's a reason that I've failed at this sort of thing for years, and I don't want you to have to." On the train, I said, "Doesn't it occur to you to give a person a chance? Does it occur to you that a person could be different?" On the train, I said, "I can tell that you're going to use multiple exclamation points when you write this down, and while I admire excess in..." On the train, I said, "This is really stupid. We were having a nice time, and now it's all... I really think it's you." "Of course you think it's me," I said on the train, "because when does someone your age take on responsibility for her?" "You were just waiting to condescend," I said on the train, and I got up and I moved to the other side of the car. On the train, I thought, I just held this woman, this china vase, this Wolverine, and now I'm no better than the vagrant in the two-seater. There's a point when you can start repairing all the awful shit you said, but then you kind of dig in and say more awful shit. I was a social worker at a halfway house back when, and I used to say to clients, when you're becoming angry, you're becoming reverent. Sometimes I think that when I'm flipping off some asshole, hating and belittling him, maybe I'm honoring him too. What if I'm just not in a place anymore when I can go through with it? What if the use-by date is used and bygone? On the train, I said, "I figure you're trying to be nice and you just don't know how, because all you really know about me is my bio." She was rather vehement about my non-awareness of her unique properties from across the car, and I was nodding in agreement. All this had happened, and we still had 8 stops or something. I just had to sit there with him staring at me. We fitted in the whole of a May to December romance, from unwarranted optimism to contempt, between Surf Avenue and Union Square. I couldn't believe he was willing to write the whole thing off so easy, and now he was going to go back to his hovel and pick his scabs. I couldn't believe she wasn't mature enough to realize that this is what happens when you're involved with other people, roller coastering. I couldn't believe I rode the train all the way to Coney Island and back with this geezer just because he could quote from philosophers. We got off the train together, and that was a heavy labor. Another Saturday night in which I was going to lay myself down beside insomnia. We got out, climbed the stairs. He was going south, I was going east. We were alike, both guilty of thinking more than we were admitting. All I could formulate was the perception that I hadn't really kissed anyone like that in so long. Didn't I deserve it just a little bit? He said, "We could just start the conversation over as though we haven't met. You could even play my part. It's a small effort." But then we were kissing goodnight, and I don't know why, except that this is the custom, like Judas summoning the Roman guard. I kissed him goodnight because I was kissing goodbye to all the old guys and their nostalgia and shaky confidence and felt tip pens. "I'll call you," I said, which meant, I think, that I devoutly wished to call, but that something was likely to prevent me. "I'll call you," he said, which meant, I guess, that he wouldn't call at all, but he thought he should say something. 9th Street it was, when she turned east toward the park, and I could see her receding, an actual person receding. No one would have thought I ever knew him, except that maybe I walked his dog for him or something, or typed his correspondence. No one would ever have thought I knew her except from casual encounters on Craigslist or because I needed help with my affairs. I watched him head into the crosswalk and almost get run over by a bicyclist, and then I called Ariel and told her I was in one piece. I watched as some fellow accosted her on the sidewalk, for loose change, I suppose. In that moment, I seethed with jealousy. Ariel said I needed to get right back on the horse, the dead horse. So first thing I did was sign on to OkCupid. Any activity? I knew she was going to post about it. I decided it wouldn't be actual mutual assured destruction unless I posted too. Started following his status updates because I needed to vet them, but also because I was curious. I mean, they were about me. I'd already friended her, and I confess I felt sad when reading her posts. Though, can you really be sad about a bunch of ones and zeros? Like a week later, I saw him through the window in that coffee shop, looking at his watch, contemplating his different conception of time. So that's that little experiment. This book, The Four Fingers of Death, a lot of it's set in the desert. I spent a lot of the writing portion of the book in the Sonoran Desert, mainly in and around the Tucson area. Tucson's been much on my mind recently for the obvious political reasons. But when I was there, what was amazing to me as someone from the Northeast and thus from a very populated part of the country was the sort of radical drama of expanse in the desert. And among the features of that expanse, uppermost in my experience when I was there was the night sky. I found the night sky in the desert just breathtaking. So I wrote this little short passage. It's sort of kind of a prose poem-y passage about my experience of the night sky in the desert. I'll just read this, it's short, and then that'll be it. Night fell over the desert, and Monaco 37 streaked past again, and the stars were like the future perfect of an uncommon verb. Or the stars were the filaments of discarded human aspirations, or the stars in the night sky were the innumerable preschoolers of September, afraid to climb onto the bus in order to have their liberty abridged. Or the stars in the night sky were like so many holes into which our heads were to be stuck. Where the stars in the night sky were the innumerable computations of some frail and overburdened supercomputer come to its logical end. Where the stars in the night sky were the total sum of responsibilities, grievances, loves of a certain nation listing to the end of empire. Where the stars in the night sky were an example of every possible color in the spectrum of all colors, but the beauty of this spectrum was so overwhelming that an unaided eye could no longer discern it. Or the stars in the night sky were the number of words required to correctly describe the stars as a whole, or the stars in the night sky represented the number of times that a certain recalcitrant boy was reminded to observe the natural world around him. where the stars in the night sky were the ghosts of all the dead, known and unknown to this boy and others. Or the stars in the night sky were pocket lighters flicked on during the encore of the stadium rock show, back when there were still pocket lighters and rock shows. Or the stars in the night sky were a painterly representation of the idea of insignificance, where the stars in the night sky were the manifest eruption of something from nothing, where the stars hinted at a conflagration happening on the other side of a wall of dark substances through which these tiny holes had been poked. Where the stars in the night sky were a soup of possibility, a broth of what might have been and what might come to pass. The stars in the night sky were a grinding down of all the mineralia of planet Earth into infinitesimal grains, which grains were in turn bits of gas and debris cast off by the stars themselves. The stars in the night sky indicated the natural end of our 24-hour day, and that was why they were greeted with such astonishment and relief. The turning away from the sun was both relief and impertinence. The stars in the night sky were the light show for the desert itself, a ratification of disuse. The stars in the night sky could only be appreciated in silence. The stars in the night sky could only be experienced in motionlessness. The stars in the night sky had a cumulative effect, and the longer you looked at them, the more you wanted to, as if the stars were somehow addictive. The stars in the night sky were addictive, and when used improperly, they crowded out other activities, particularly social activities, unless these activities were organized around the sky itself. The stars in the night sky cohered with certain harmonic principles, cycles per second, but they didn't accord with principles that affirmed tonality. The stars in the night sky were prolix, show-offy, because they meant to make a mockery of mathematical ideas of infinity just by being here. They were finite but limitless. The stars in the night sky had to be seen in the desert, and eventually the desert lured out all stargazers, even people who were busy with many other things: special education, identity theft, the making of low-budget pornography films, day trading in Central Asian markets. They all found that when they saw the stars in the desert, they put aside these childish things. And thus in the desert there was the very large array, and then the very, very large array, and then there was the international Sonoran array. People came to the desert because the stars were in the desert, and the stars had yet to be corrupted by man, though man had managed to corrupt so much else, and there was no fee involved. In fact, the stars, it seemed, would crush man in a scenic gravitational panorama before man would ever corrupt the stars. And that was why man mostly neglected them, or attempted to surpass the stars, gauzing over the night sky with his sugary glaze, in pursuit of making the night sky less seductive and more like the screen of a monitor switched into the off position. Thanks a lot.